Hello, and welcome to What We've Learned. Series 3, Episode 10, the finale, the wrap up, the last chat that Shane and I dissect all the brilliance that we've heard over the last 10 episodes of this series. And this series being on leaders and pioneers, Shane.
It's been such a pleasure, hasn't it? Oh, what a treat.
Oh, fabulous. And we thought rather than just disappear off into the sunset while we ponder what Series 4 might look like and when we may come back, we thought we'd actually go back to the start. And David Gilbertson, who is our first guest, the author of Wine Bar Theory, 28 Rules for Life, Work and Otherwise, brilliant book that we talked about with David. We've picked our favourites from there to weave back to, well, what's that? What have we heard from all of those people that we've had since David? And how do those rules not only reflect what they've said, but also for us and for you listening in what they might mean in terms of how you can take some takeaways from this final episode. So Shane, you've had a delve through the 28 Wine Bar Theory rules. Where do we want to start?
I think to me, it's all about the ones that sort of sum up what makes a great leader. And the first one is Rule 24, which is simply lead more, manage less. And it sounds so simple, doesn't it, Steve? But I think both in our careers have seen good examples and bad examples. So to you, what does this phrase lead more, manage less actually mean?
Good question. I mean, I can think of good, bad and horrific actually, Shane, but we may not have time for the third category. I think on the bad side, and it's probably easier when we dissect these things to think and remember the people that weren't so good at this. Was I certainly recall, and I won't use names, but a marketing director when I was client side that was there till 9, 10 o'clock at night, had a very big team, probably 40, 50 plus capable marketing people underneath them, but just never delegated. So that was the first thing that by accident, he made himself incredibly stressed, incredibly hardworking. One, he wasn't using the talent that he had built around him. Good, very, very strong recruitment policy in that organization, very difficult to get in. Therefore, the people in those seats were really capable, but underutilized. And that was the real crime of it, is not only is he working too hard, he's not letting people help. And he's not letting those people take on things. So I think often leaders will fear delegation of tasks because it won't be done as well as them. But how on earth do you grow somebody up if you're not willing to let them do it, or indeed let them do it and be surprised by how they do it, and perhaps they do it better than you did?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think culture, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I've been around long enough to see different cultures emerge. And the more, if like, more modern way of working is, it's not about telling people how to do it. It's, as you say, it's setting that direction and letting them maybe do it better than you. But another expression that David uses in the book under this point, which I absolutely love, is good bosses aren't bossy. And probably the reason I love that one is that's one when you have confidence. Lots of people say I am quite confident, but that's a discussion for another day. It's very easy for your enthusiasm and what you think you're putting out there as suggestions being interpreted as that's it, that's the answer, or being bossy, as but it's not that intention. It's trying to get that dialogue going with ideas. So it's a difficult one to achieve, isn't it? What have you found works for you?
Well, I think the phrase that always comes to mind for me is experience is not a monopoly on good ideas. So for me, working with people, and I've learned this from others, but at any level, in whatever I'm doing, whether it's the day job or in different facets of my life, is don't assume that because you're the oldest or the more experienced or whatever it might put you at the top of the trees, that you're the only one that will know the answer. I think people can come about solving problems. If there's kind of wisdom of crowds, team effort on it, that's great. 7 brains are better than 1, that sort of thing. But also where you've got an open and a safe forum that people can throw in, well, this might seem a silly idea and I'm really junior, but why don't we do it like this? I mean, and that's the thing I've learned is they'll come in with incredibly insightful ideas because they're not bogged down in the detail. They've not done it before. And to be honest, Shane, some of the most insightful things I've ever heard start with, this is probably obvious, but and it's never obvious, and it's
Yeah.
always helpful.
Or this might be a silly idea, but it's
Exactly.
those the ones you want to listen very carefully to. And I think it's something we all know this, and I think it's something we've missed in the last 2 years, is that when we as humans get together and we get that chance to spark off each other, as you say, that wisdom of crowds. But the more you do it, the more people feel willing to share and hopefully have a culture of encouragement. They have leaders who encourage them to participate, and then explain perhaps when it's still a good idea but it's not appropriate, is the why not. I think that's often frustrating for people, is that they don't understand the backstory, that it's a great idea but in this situation it's not one we could pursue because
but it could also be that, and again, I've had this many times, that you came back, you mentioned culture, and my example of that ex-colleague who just set the wrong culture, which is, goodness, do we all need to work till 9 o'clock at night and not delegate down? If it's the other way around, where you foster this environment of openness, trust, that actually anyone can come up with an idea, might not be, to your point, right, because they may not have the full information, but it feels a little bit like building a Lego house. Is you need the first Lego piece in, and that Lego piece, without that in, doesn't spark the next piece that goes in and the next piece. And somebody's off the mark idea that's not quite right might end with that's not going to work. But actually, what that's made me think is, what about that? And you've got that, literally the building blocks of a really good idea, but it comes from something that on its own may not have completed the picture, but it certainly started it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that leads us on to sort of the next point, that one of the other points, not in chronological order, that David makes, but
what we got? What number?
Jumping back to 14, how do you achieve the 1 under 24, which was lead more, manage less? And lots of people that I work with in senior teams, even boards, say to me, I just haven't got enough good managers. Well, sorry, buck stops with you. That's not their fault, because they're not doing the next one, which is 14, which is be more responsible, give away responsibility. And I see far too much of sort of holding on to all sorts of things. It could be, and you probably see this too, Steve, like budgeting. Why are you not doing literally bottom up budgeting where the most junior person in your team is involved in the budget process? Why is it a top down? So, that responsibility, giving away responsibility, to me is a hugely important part of leadership.
Yeah, making people feel that they're worth something. I agree and trusted. Funny enough, actually, this very week, one of the team here where I work, we've just made them the VP of social, in terms of their vice president for getting us out and doing stuff together. Is that a badge that they will wear on their LinkedIn? No, but does it make them feel like, oh, actually, so, I've got response. Oh, so I can come up with good ideas, can I? And that's playing to that individual in terms of what she loves to do. It's the responsibility doesn't always have to be, although I agree with you, things like finance is, it's a particularly for you and I and people that might be listening in from a marketing background, it's one of those, oh no, we need to do some maths, do we? But actually, of course you bloody do. But the sooner you're introduced to it, and if you're given a chance by your boss, your boss's boss, in a trusted, safe environment to go, look, go and start to learn this stuff. I want you to input the KPIs that go to the board or wherever they are. You see your piece in the puzzle or in the jigsaw or in the machine, rather than you just feeling like you are literally at the bottom. So I think empowering people, absolutely agree. And it plays back to that other point, doesn't it? If you've got too much to do, then give it to other people. More hands makes more work complete faster, which I don't even think is a phrase, but it is now. But the idea that we can get more done together, and it exposes them to things that they'll learn. They might not get it right, but they'll certainly get the job done. And with that feeling of empowerment that I'm responsible for something which I don't think is trivial at all. As I mentioned, example colleague, that you're in charge of social, getting us out and doing things and thinking differently on that, versus head of finance versus whatever the role might be. It's such an empowering position for those people to be, and it's a freedom to that manager or that leader to just have one task off their plate.
Yeah, I think it's really good, but it does require, of course, businesses where everybody feels responsible. That person's going to have real investment in making sure that the best possible things are put on. But if something goes wrong, they can't be blamed. I think it's that shared responsibility, because a blame culture kills that willingness for people to step up. And I think it's also something Richard in our very last podcast in the series, he mentioned, you progress more quickly when you make your boss's job easier. And it's just so true. It's sort of like the ones who do progress very quickly take away your pain. They see the pain you've got. They come up with solutions. They get on and do it before you've even realised, and you haven't even asked them to do it. And they're the people who go a long way very fast.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also the leader that recognises that you want to breed a culture where the people that work for you want your job, and that's not a threat. That's a real opportunity to grow other people up in and around you, and into roles in the business that you may not have considered them for. And that's certainly has come out. Particularly, Ian Lovett spoke so eloquently about how over the years of running Blue Sheep, Blue Ven, that there's certain individuals that came in for one particular reason and have gone in totally different directions. And because they're good at it, because they've been given that environment where they are allowed to try and to fail. My classic phrase someone taught me years ago is, there's bumpers on cars and there's rubbers on pencils because humans make mistakes. It's okay to be in that environment. You don't have to get it right first time. You just need to understand and learn from it.
And I think it's really interesting is that, your sort of attitude to taking risks as a leader, and there's no doubt about it, rubs off on your team. And one of the clear sort of indications, I was very lucky enough to work with an organisation, and again, it's something that David touches on point 19 this time. If talent exists within, promote it. Oh my goodness, it was an organisation that sent people to run a single person office. I was lucky enough to have the choice between Australia and America, which was a 4-person office. I was 24. And I didn't see any of the challenges of going to, a country, to a different business culture, in a role that I'd never done. I was just excited about it, and achieved I think much more. And that company achieved so much because they recruited grad talent. Doesn't have to be graduate talent, obviously, but it was the culture of the business, because it was sort of academic publishing, that did that. Gave them responsibility really, really early. And you could see, my boss who was a manager, was only a year and a half older than me. And then, I made the board at 28, which it didn't seem inconceivable at all, because this company had this culture of, we've recruited the best people in the first place, then we should be jolly well promoting it within. And I don't see much of that going on. I might be being cynical, but what do you think, Steve? Do you think that too many people going out with the shopping list to try and find the perfect candidate and bring it in, particularly maybe within marketing and agencies?
Well, I think in any discipline, I'm just thinking back to time client side, where I completely agree with you. I think the slight nuance to that, Shane, that I've seen that's the bad side of it is people that are really good subject matter experts in whatever they do get automatically promoted to be managers of the people, their kind of their peers. And I think that's often a disaster, because you can have people that are really good at what they do, but are then expected to manage the people that do it, but aren't given the chance to decide whether they want to do it, often in the environment I've been in, or B, the skills and the support around it. So for every one of you, there's somebody that actually doesn't want to do that and shouldn't be forced into it. I think on the positive side, though, again, where you can give people, and it links back to what you've already said, and certainly Ian talked a lot about this, of people that, if you've already got good people in the building, why are you going out? There's a big risk. Yes. And the analogy that he used was, from a soccer point of view, that if you bring in a star player from outside, will they gel with the rest of the team? Are they going to put the nose out of joint of those people that have come up through the ranks and they feel like, well, I've got nowhere to go if that's, you get to a certain level and then someone else comes in from the outside. I think it's really missing the obvious that you've got to exactly David's point 19, talent's there, promote it. If it's not there, maybe you need to go and find it, but perhaps you need to nurture that talent before you bring in external.
I think the interesting point, you mentioned the word there, subject matter expert. And I find this fascinating because it's something that Gemma Davis sort of mentioned when we talked to her, is that, of course, You know, a lot of the subjects that we're trying to find experts on have only been around a couple of years in their current guise. You know, whether that's sort of coding, no code coding, or whether it's machine learning, or whether it's, you know, slightly different now. Marketing automation has been around a good 10 years, but, you know, at the beginning of that process, we were all learning it from scratch. So, you know, how long do you need to become a subject matter expert versus finding somebody super bright who's interested in the area and going, actually, this is a new area for all of us. Why don't you have a go at it? And I know you've done that really successfully, Steve, haven't you, in sort of some areas, both
Well,
yourself
just
and
by
team?
chance, really, for me personally, that you know, and so what do you also need? Back to leadership. I've had a couple of times. I remember two brilliant bosses that get balance, Shane, between empowering you, but also giving you the guide rails, and that this is how we do things. So you weren't just sent off into the wilderness and go on, then you go and work it out, which can be really terrifying to people. They gave enough rope, if you like, to hang myself, but also recognised that actually Steve's got an appetite, a desire, a curiosity on this subject. None of us know the answer to this. Let's go and let him find it out. And I probably at that stage in my career around managing and starting e-commerce back in the late 90s into the early noughties was, you know, it was a very kind of unknown space. I didn't have the strategic know-how, that boss did, and that's the other point, is the wed together. If you've got, and I see this with social media quite a lot, you'll have people that generationally will get social media in terms of how to use it, but they won't necessarily understand why to use it when it comes to business. But there's a good marriage there. Tactical nous, I know how social media works, coupled with that experience, strategic experience of, and it's the point you made earlier, somebody might come up with an idea, but actually there's a reason why this won't work, or we should look at it in a different way. So that there's a piece around collaboration, and again that comes out from good leaders. They don't just decide on their own. Again, back to Ian made a brilliant point around, you know, when it's a really challenging time in the business, we could have made a decision and dictated it to the staff, but instead we asked them what was their opinion, what do they think is the right thing to do.
Yeah, and that shows real trust, doesn't it, in your team? I think that's lovely, and that, you know, something that's come through, I think, from all the people we've talked about, you know, on these podcasts that we've talked to, and their experience as leaders, is that they appear to demonstrate a great deal of empathy. And I know the next point, sort of, that both you and I picked was 27, stand in the other person's shoes. So why did you pick this one, Steve, as being one of the sort of guiding principles of leadership?
Well, I think it harks back to Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird, Shane, reading that book many, many years ago and talking to his daughter, Scout, about a case for Tom Robinson, and saying, look, you never truly understand another person until you walk in their skin. And so I think in any aspect of my life, personal, professional, and I wouldn't say I'm always perfect at it, certainly on the personal side, is trying to have that empathy and understanding of, well, what are they thinking? What makes them tick? And of course, when it comes to marketing, our discipline, that's absolutely vital to marketing. If you're trying to target people, an audience, whoever it might be, you need to understand them. And again, the same is true at a micro level with leadership or management, is if you're trying to, again, even down to the level of articulate direction for a business or talk to them about management reports or whatever it might be, you've got to talk their language. If you're sitting in front of a bunch of Oxbridge graduates that are going to come out and are computer scientists, speak the way they would speak, versus if you're just talking to your team of customer service agents, don't try and bombard them with language around what's happened in this fiscal, in terms that they'll look at you and think, I've no idea what you're talking about, but we'll just nod politely. So I think having that ability to attune to people, to what makes them tick and how they think, is vital in any walk of life.
Yes, and again, it's about talking to each other, isn't it? And sort of trying to build that understanding. I think there's a misunderstanding sometimes also, and both you and I recently participated in a conference where there was a fantastic discussion on diversity and inclusion, and it's about, again, this understanding that you know, it's not that your words are interesting, it's understanding what language you use that you don't even see is not inclusive. And you can only get that when you start to sit down and have discussions and joint discussions and see it from the other person's point of view. And the other really important thing, and I think this was quite, for me, liberating, it doesn't mean that you have to agree It means you have to understand. And I think it's a conversation that, we all need to have a lot more of. But what things do we say that actually immediately put barriers up, or, lock people out, without even realizing it? We all do it.
Yeah, without even seeing it, absolutely, because you've used language that they just don't understand, or is offensive to them, or it just loses them, whatever it might be. And it's that. And again, I suppose from the modern leader, and maybe they should have always had it, is that emotional intelligence to really be able to have empathy and understand, and to, as it says, number 27, to stand in their shoes and think, how would they see this? How would they want to understand this? What do they need to hear or to know right now, rather than what do I think I should be telling them?
Yes, and I think it's more than just trying to imagine. It is that sometimes you can't, because it's such a different experience. I did see recently, and there's a bit of binge TV where I think
Shame,
it was.
that's unlike you.
Know, where actually somebody was forced to put on a fat suit to understand what it was really like to be a 4 stone overweight, and just that you couldn't move quite as quickly, and and just that sometimes the extremes that you need to go
I've been wearing one of those for a while.
You and me both.
But to the point of to that again, that leader that's got that ability, if they can't understand, that's fine, but maybe there's someone else. And again, it's that not just taking and shouldering all the responsibility yourself. I've got to craft the perfect speech to the staff. Is reaching out to people in and around you, whether that's home or at work, that might be better connected and might better sense check. And it goes back to empowerment. If you take one of your team and go, look, could you just read my speech? Could you read my slides and tell me what you think? That's an incredible shot in the arm. That's chest out, spine up for that person that goes, wow, the boss trusts me to take that.
Or they trust them so much that they write the speech for them. I mean, I had a fantastic example, and I won't name them, but there is a leader that I know who finds it really difficult to express themselves in public, and found somebody in their team who writes in their voice brilliantly. And it's really interesting. There's so much trust there, that it's done that way round, and actually the revisions, not somebody reviewing what they'd written, but somebody writing for them. And I think that shows huge trust, and they're doing what they're good at, which I think is. And also what's interesting is often what goes hand in hand, this is point 28, is you tend to be better at the things you enjoy doing. That certainly is true for me. I put more love, more hours into the things I love. The things that, perhaps I'm not so keen, I can do them. I can absolutely do them, but they're not what I would say I want to spend my waking hours doing. They're done through slightly gritted teeth, and we all do that. We have our lists at the bottom of the list of the things we least enjoy. So I think that's another good way of doing it. Find a way to do the stuff you enjoy, and find other people who love to do the stuff you hate.
Yeah, and again, that's back to recruitment, isn't it? It's don't hire people that look like you. Hire people that are different to you, because to your point, the chances are what you might find painful or as bottom of your list might be top of theirs. So you've got that blend of skills in your team or your department or your business. But also don't just store them up. And absolutely, Shane, in terms of there are certain things that I'm woeful at, and I will, and I've got colleagues, I'm lucky enough to have colleagues that I know are far better than me at it, and I will work with them. I'll take stuff back. It's a kind of quid pro quo. There's certain things that I like to do or I'm more comfortable with. And I think you're right. Most people do more of the stuff they enjoy. So again, from a leadership point of view, recognize it links to 27, doesn't it? That stand in other people's shoes. If you understand what your teams like doing and they don't like doing, try and give them more of what they like and less of what they don't. And if you can't do that, we'll find ways to make what they don't like easier for them or more enjoyable or whatever it might be. That might be training. It might be reprocess. It might be all sorts of different ways of making it less daunting for them.
I think that's great, and that shows empathy there, Steve. I think that's a great point about understanding the reason people don't like doing things. Is it because there's a fear factor? And I think speaking presenting is often one, that I come across. I have people come to me and say, oh, you make it look easy. And I go, when I first did this, I hated doing it.
Same.
And so it's interesting you say the same. But it's through learning how to do it and being trained how to do it, that you overcome that. And then once you've overcome that, then comes the enjoyment. So I think that's a really great point you make, Steve, is that if leaders can find, ask almost that question of, getting people to write down 5 things in your job. What's number 1 thing you love? What's number 5 thing you hate? Give them more of number 1, but find out ways to overcome the things they hate's a strong word, but dislike. Put off.
We'll put to the bottom of the list. I think it's a really nice point, Shane. Really lovely. Now, look, there's 28 of these rules, Shane. We haven't got enough tape to do all of the podcast on that. And of course, what we don't want to do is cover every 28 points, because you should be listening in. If you don't own Wine Bar Theory by David Gilbertson, you should do. And therefore, you can read them and you can make your own decisions on them. So let's change the direction slightly, Shane. The other thing that we've been thinking about for this series finale is what ingredients make up a good leader. What are the characteristics we're looking for in a leader or a pioneer? And if we were in a lab, we were scientifically working away to try and build the perfect leader or pioneer. What are our thoughts, Shane? What are we looking for? What have we heard from the people that have given us their time as guests this series, but also generally, what are we looking for in a great leader or a pioneer, do you think, today?
Well, I think...
Where would you start?
Where should we start? Well, in fact, it's not one of the ones that I'd sort of thought about in advance, but I think you've just embodied it, because I know that you do this, and I think you are one of the people I hold up as, pioneering in different ways. But Steve, you said tape, and you've just lost all our iPods, Apple listeners there with what's this word tape. I think a great leader always has the ability to laugh at themselves.
Yeah, well, yeah, indeed. So C90 tape fans, I'm afraid we don't actually record on this. It is recorded into the cloud via all sorts of VoIP software, which I can talk to you about afterwards. Yeah, well, there's an interesting point in that, Shane, actually, as well, of being able to just, again, speak the right language for your audience. And I pride myself, and people I work with might be offended or disagree with me, of trying to use an anecdote or a phrase or something that doesn't result in them all scratching their heads and Googling or looking on YouTube for what on earth was that cultural reference all about. I think that's a very important one, to not only to speak the language, but to have a sense of humour, Shane, but a sense of place as well, that be humble about who you are and who's around you.
And I think that came through massively, whether it was Dom or Ruth or Emma or Richard, Ian, David, all of our guests in this series, that sort of sense of self. They knew that they know themselves, humbleness, definitely. Ego's an interesting word. It's actually a sense of self, but it's that, again, one of those words that's misused. But I think all of our guests who've achieved so much have always given the credit to others before themselves. And I think that really, for me, was one of the most interesting characteristics, that every time we spoke to everybody came out so clearly.
Yeah, I agree. I think they were schooled ready for podcasts to not come across as an egotistical maniac. Not in that. No, of course. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's back to that team player. Yes, there needs to be a leader, and my analogy, somebody needs to set the sat nav, somebody needs to steer the wheel, but everybody helps get that engine, that vehicle in that direction and get it on the route it needs to be. It only comes from experience, though, and I think the other point that came out, particularly Dom, Ruth, but others on the series, were around the fact that they recognise when things have been hard or haven't worked, what they can learn and take away from those, in terms of what the next steps are. If I've not achieved, or something's I've not done it well, or I've been let down by others, how do I take that as fuel rather than something that just takes them apart or destroys them?
That, coupled with just sheer resilience. I mean, Emma encapsulated that massively. I mean, just the power of, as you say, to keep going. But also I think, we're not saying these people are all necessarily always easy. Some sheer-blooded mindedness gets you a long way, as Ruth definitely. Not accepting a no, not accepting somebody when somebody says can't, seeing it as a challenge. And I think that real. No, I'm going to show you wrong comes through in lots of our guests.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a really interesting balance, isn't it? But it is that again, turning things into fuel, and Ruth absolutely embodied that in terms of if the world says no, then she's going to find another way. There's going to be a way. There is a way. Of course, there's a way. You can't tell me I can't do something. I think that's a really it's not well, it is single-mindedness, I guess, but it's a positive aspect of it. That if you couple that with leadership, Shane, I think somebody that sees the world like that and then forges a team behind them that say, right, we'll go with you. We don't know what the answer is, but we believe that you believe strongly enough that there is a way of doing it. You really have built a very, very loyal and solid team.
So perhaps people listening, if you're told no a lot, maybe it's your chance to forge ahead and not accept it. But I think the other one you mentioned it earlier is curiosity, and it's what I've loved through my career and continue to love, is that there's always something new to learn, and I'm never bored. And again, that intellectual curiosity, the ability to sort of learn new things, it's just brilliant. And it appears that, again, the leaders have that real ability to do that.
They rediscover something that we've all got, and I'm sure we've certainly talked, not necessarily on this podcast, but we'll have talked about this before, Shane, is that as children, 2.5-year-olds, and if you've got parents listening in, they'll relate to the day that their child discovers the question why. Which is endearing if it's not your child, but is incredibly tiring when they just constantly asking why. But it's something, it's incredibly natural at that age. We've landed here. We need to learn everything. So the why question is really important. But I think life eventually knocks that out of us, that we stop asking why. And I think that, again, it's people that have rediscovered that why, or the curiosity to go, well, and again, for me, I've used this so many times with people from marketing point of views. Well, why do we do it this way? Why don't we do this? Why don't we try it? And I think that harks back to the point earlier of trust. If you're in an environment where you feel like you could fail, you've got that freedom underneath that leader or that boss to say, well, I'm going to try it this way. Good, let's try it. Will it work? Don't know, but it's a step closer to whatever the answer is.
And that's often interpreted in adults as being brave, being a bit of a risk taker. But actually, in some ways, I think you're de-risking it by trying things, because otherwise, as we've all learnt, the world does not stay the same. And if you stay the same, then, you're in danger of getting well and truly left behind. So I think that ability to look ahead and to take some risks, even though perhaps the people who take them don't see them as risks, is really important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other side of that why is you end up stuck with what I would call the 1997 people. Oh no, we tried that in 1997. It didn't work. I don't think we should try it again. They'll never push forward.
Do they all have that accent, Steve?
Only 2 of them. Yeah. In my head, they always do, Shane. Yeah, that's how they sound. Is that? Oh no, not that. No, we wouldn't do that here. It's a balance, right? You don't want to be so rogue that you're going to bring down the business and make rash, terrible decisions. And I suppose the way I culture people where I work, when it comes to being agency with clients, is look, spend the money like it's our own. Would we do this if it was our money that we were charged with in terms of building that campaign or program? If it's a yes, we do it. If it's a no, we don't. If it's a maybe, we test it. Simple as that.
And even more liberating is sometimes when you can give a team and say, right, you've got no budget. What can you do with no money? And that can be very freeing. So it's very surprising.
It can be, Shane, but I'm not going to recommend that on this podcast in case any of the clients I know are listening. But no, you're quite right. It's that doing on the minimal is, what could you do? It's suddenly the necessity is the mother of all invention, right? If it's really easy to spend money on a big budget or a big program or a big project, whatever your walk of life is. It's much harder when there's not much money kicking around.
Or easier.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Much harder to, well, yes, quite. It's harder because you have to think more about it, because you can't throw money at the problem, if you will. Um, but it certainly gives it a certain type of freedom or a different way of thinking for sure.
It does. So on that note, Steve, I think we've
Have
summed
we
up.
done it? Have we
I think
built the perfect leader or pioneer? We've in some kind of weird Frankenstein-esque experiment, Shane. We bolt all of those brilliant people together in series 3. We've got them. Is that what we're saying?
I think so.
We can rest easy. Good. Okay. All right. Well, in that case, look, what shall I say? Shane, thank you ever so much. An absolute pleasure as always. Always fascinating, brilliant, insightful doing it with you, let alone all the brilliant guests. So thank you. To anyone listening in, it's the end of series 3. That means you've missed 34 other episodes. I've no idea where you've been, but fear not. They're all available on Spotify, on Acast, on Apple, wherever you get podcasts from. If you just subscribe, you will find all of them dead easy. They'll all ping into your inbox when we put new ones in, but you can go back through the back catalogue. Don't feel like you need to listen to them chronologically. Go and dip in, enjoy, and maybe some of those people we've spoken about in series 3, if you haven't heard what they've had to say, then I certainly would recommend starting there. And settle down maybe with Wine Bar Theory that you can buy on Amazon and all sorts of other good and indifferent bookstores, and maybe with a glass of wine or whatever it is you take. Enjoy that, enjoy David's book, and enjoy those episodes. And we'll be back at some point soon with another series to talk to you more about what we've learned. Thanks, everyone.